The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched for nearly a mile, its curved walls rising toward a ceiling that displayed the live feed of distant stars. 47 species had gathered here for 12,000 years, debating the fate of the galaxy while seated in their designated sections. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline shells. They had one thing in common. They all looked down upon the small human delegation standing at the center of the floor. Ambassador Kevin Brooks adjusted his formal uniform and tried to ignore the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon him. He was 53 years old, a career diplomat who had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. Humanity had been part of the Assembly for 60 years now, ever since the first contact in 2001-87. In all that time, they had been treated as something between guests and pets. The human delegation may now present its petition, announced the translation system. Converting the clicks and whistles of High Chancellor Verton into flat English, Kevin stepped forward. Honored members of the Assembly, humanity formally requests elevation to full membership status. We ask for equal voting rights, access to the Common Technology Archive, and inclusion in the mutual defense treaties that protect other member species. The response was immediate. Verton's elongated face twisted into an expression that Kevin had learned to recognize as amusement. The Hulixian leader made a series of clicking sounds, and the translator rendered them as laughter. Around the chamber, other delegates joined in with their own species equivalents of mockery. "Young species," Verton said, when the noise died down. "Your civilization discovered fire perhaps 10,000 years ago. You have been traveling between stars for less than 3 centuries. The Hulixian Dominion was building empires when your ancestors were learning to walk upright." Kevin kept his face neutral. He had expected this. "With respect, Chancellor, our request is based on our contributions to galactic society, not our age." "Contributions?" Verton leaned forward in his hovering chair. "Name one thing your species has contributed that we did not already possess." Kevin opened his mouth to respond, but another delegate interrupted. The Vorn ambassador, a being made of living crystal, spoke in tones that sounded like wind chimes. "The humans are industrious workers. They make adequate servants and laborers. Perhaps that is contribution enough," more laughter echoed through the chamber. Kevin felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides, but he forced himself to remain calm. Behind him, his aide Linda Marsh placed a gentle hand on his elbow in warning. "The petition is denied," Verton declared. "Humanity may continue to observe our proceedings and participate in limited trade. Nothing more. This matter is closed." Kevin walked out of the chamber with his head held high, but inside he felt something breaking. 60 years of patient diplomacy, of following every rule and protocol, of proving humanity's worth through deeds rather than words. All of it meant nothing to beings who had decided what humans were before ever meeting them. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks through the hyperspace lanes that humanity was not allowed to map for themselves. Kevin spent most of that time staring out the viewport at the streaming lights of faster-than-light travel. Thinking about what he would tell his government, Linda found him in the observation lounge on the final night before arrival. She was 35 years old, a naval commander on loan to the diplomatic corps, and she had none of Kevin's patience for politics. "They're never going to accept us," she said, sitting down beside him. "You know that, don't you?" Kevin nodded slowly. "I'm starting to understand that. Yes, so what do we do?" Before he could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "Ambassador Brooks, please report to the bridge immediately. There's been an incident. The incident was a massacre. The Ketheri swarm, species of insectoid predators that the Assembly tolerated because they were too dangerous to confront, had invaded 3 human colony worlds on the frontier. 2 million people were dead. Men, women, children. All of them consumed by creatures that viewed other sentient beings as food." Kevin watched the footage in horrified silence. Cities burning. People running through streets filled with chittering monsters. Children screaming for parents who would never come. "What was the Assembly's response?" he asked quietly. The captain's voice was bitter. "They've scheduled a formal inquiry. It will convene in 18 months. 18 months, Linda repeated. 2 million dead, and they need 18 months to decide if they should care. Kevin closed his eyes. In that darkness, something changed inside him. The patient diplomat who believed in working within the system died quietly, replaced by something harder and colder. "Get me a secure channel to President Grant," he said. "Maximum encryption. This conversation cannot be intercepted." The meeting with President Marcus Grant and the Global Leadership Council lasted for 3 days. They reviewed every interaction humanity had ever had with the Assembly. They analyzed every slight, every denied request, every instance of discrimination disguised as policy, and they made a decision. Kevin returned to Nexus's Prime alone. He requested an audience with the full Assembly, citing a matter of urgent importance. When he stood before them again, he was no longer the hopeful diplomat seeking acceptance. "I am here to deliver a formal notice," he announced. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. We renounce all treaties, agreements, and obligations. We will chart our own course among the stars." The silence that followed was absolute. No species had ever voluntarily left the Assembly. It was unthinkable. Verton recovered first. "This is foolish even for primitives. You will die alone in the darkness between stars. You will be prey for every predator species in the galaxy." Kevin smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Perhaps, but we would rather die free than live as your pets." He turned and walked out of the chamber for the last time. Behind him, he could hear the Assembly erupting into chaos, delegates shouting over each other in a dozen languages. But above it all, he heard Verton's dismissive voice. "Let them go. They will come crawling back within a decade, begging for readmission. Primitives always do." Kevin did not look back. He did not need to. He knew something that Verton did not. Something that no alien species seemed capable of understanding about humanity. When humans were pushed into a corner, they did not beg. They evolved. They adapted. They fought, and they won. The ship carrying Kevin Brooks broke away from the Nexus, its prime station, and turned toward Earth. Behind him, the greatest civilization in galactic history continued its endless deliberations. Secure in its ancient power, they had no idea what they had just unleashed. The first year after withdrawal was the hardest. Without access to galactic trade networks, essential resources became scarce overnight. Medicine, fuel, rare metals, all the things humanity had grown dependent on from alien markets vanished. People died because of shortages that should never have existed. Critics called the withdrawal a death sentence for the species. But humans had always been at their best when facing extinction. Dr. Samantha Cole stood in her laboratory on the Prometheus research station, orbiting Jupiter like a small metal moon. She was 41 years old, with gray already streaking her dark hair from the stress of impossible deadlines. The Defense Council had given her team a simple mission: figure out how alien technology worked and build something better. The problem, she explained to her exhausted researchers, is that galactic species haven't innovated in thousands of years. They found solutions that worked and never questioned them again. That's not science. That's religion. She held up a component from a captured Cathari engine taken from the wrecks left behind after the colony massacres. This drive uses quantum tunneling to move through space. It's elegant. It's refined. And it's fundamentally limited by the same physics they discovered 6,000 years ago. Her lead engineer, a young man named Danny Ortiz, frowned at the component. "So we copy it and make it faster." "No," Samantha set the piece down. "We throw it away and start from scratch. We don't tunnel through space. We fold it." The breakthrough came 18 months later. The fold space drive operated on principles no other species had ever explored. Bending the fabric of reality itself to move ships from one point to another instantly. It was faster than anything in the galactic arsenal. It was also completely undetectable by conventional sensors. Word of the success spread through Earth's military and scientific communities like wildfire. Admiral Christopher Lane, commander of the Defense Coalition's naval forces, visited the station personally to witness a demonstration. He was 60 years old. A career officer who had spent decades watching humanity be humiliated by species that considered them insects, when the test ship vanished and reappeared on the other side of the solar system in less than 3 seconds, he smiled for the first time in years. "How soon can you put this in a warship?" he asked. Samantha matched his smile. "We already have. Follow me." The shipyards of Titan were humanity's greatest secret. Hidden beneath the moon's thick atmosphere and protected by layers of jamming technology, they had been building a new fleet for 5 years. The ships Lu had nothing like the graceful vessels that dominated galactic space. They were angular, brutal things covered in armor plating and weapons systems. Admiral Lane walked through the construction bay, running his hand along the hull of the lead ship. It was called the Defiant, and it was the first of a new class of battleships that would change everything. "The assembly builds ships like works of art," said Captain Henry Walsh. "Who would command the Defiant?" "Pretty things designed to impress. Our ships are built to survive, to kill," Lane added quietly. Henry nodded. "And to kill." While the military prepared for wars they hoped would never come, human colonists spread through uncharted space with determined efficiency. They found worlds that the assembly had marked as uninhabitable and made them home anyway. On the frozen planet designated XR7 in assembly charts, renamed New Helsinki by its settlers, Governor Paula Jennings supervised the construction of the first atmospheric processors. She was a practical woman who had grown up on Earth's harsh northern territories, and she had no patience for the complaints of colonists who found the work too difficult. The Helixians wouldn't set foot on a world below freezing, she told a gathering of new arrivals. The Vorn can't survive an atmosphere this thin. The assembly looked at this planet and saw nothing. We look at it and see home. That's the difference between us and them. Within 5 years, New Helsinki was exporting food to neighboring colonies. Within 10, it had a population of 2 million and a thriving industrial sector. Similar stories repeated across 17 star systems. The population explosion was deliberate. Earth's governments understood that numbers meant strength, and they encouraged families to have children. The population grew from 8 billion to 40 billion in 3 decades. Young people grew up with stories of the assembly's cruelty, of the Cathari massacre, of the laughter that had greeted humanity's request for equality. They entered military academies and scientific programs with a fire in their eyes that their grandparents had never known. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Adams graduated from the academy at New West Point on Mars with the highest combat scores ever recorded. Her instructors called her a prodigy. She called herself practical. "The galaxy has forgotten about us," she told her graduating class. "They think we crawled away to die in the dark. Every single one of them believes they could destroy us without effort if they ever bothered to try. Let them believe it. Underestimation is a weapon we can use against them." On Nexus Prime, the assembly continued its eternal debates. Every few years, an observer would be sent to human space to check on the primitives. These observers returned with reports that confirmed what everyone already knew. Humans were crude, unsophisticated, and hopelessly inferior. None of them noticed the monitoring stations hidden in dead asteroids throughout the border regions. None of them detected the weapons platforms disguised as debris. None of them suspected that every one of their visits was tracked, analyzed, and filed away in Defense Coalition archives. High Chancellor Verton occasionally mentioned humanity in speeches, always as an example of what happened to species that rejected the assembly's guidance. "They live like animals now," he would say, huddled on frozen rocks, eating synthetic food, pretending they made the right choice. "In another generation, they will beg us to take them back." He was wrong. About everything, 30 years after the withdrawal, humanity was ready. Not for revenge, though many wanted it. Not for conquest, though they had the power for it. They were ready simply to exist on their own terms, answerable to no one. The galaxy would learn this soon enough. The Cathari swarm returned on a Tuesday morning, local time, to the colony world called Haven's Rest. They came with 30 hive ships and over 1 million warriors, expecting to find the same easy prey they had harvested decades before. The Queen commanding the invasion had participated in the earlier massacres and still remembered the taste of human fear. What she found instead was Admiral Christopher Lane and the Third. Fleet Haven's Rest was a garden world, one of humanity's most beautiful colonies, with green countenance and blue oceans that reminded settlers of Earth. 200,000 people called it home. When the deep space sensors detected the approaching swarm, they had exactly 4 hours to prepare. Most species would have evacuated. They would have sacrificed the colony to save lives and filed complaints with the assembly afterward. Humans did not operate that way. Admiral Lane stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display as the Cathari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. He was 67 years old now, and this would be his first real battle. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "All ships, hold formation," he ordered calmly. "Let them come to us." The Cathari Queen was puzzled by the human response. Instead of running, the primitive ships were arranging themselves in a defensive pattern around their planet. Foolish, her warriors would tear through them in minutes and feast on the soft creatures. Below, she ordered the attack, the first wave of Cathari. Fighters swept toward the human fleet in a swirling cloud of chitin and claws. They had destroyed countless civilizations with this tactic, overwhelming defenders through sheer numbers. Their natural armor could withstand most energy weapons, and their speed made them nearly impossible to target. The human ships opened fire with weapons the Cathari had never seen before. Dr. Samantha Cole's plasma cannons superheated matter to temperatures found in stellar cores and projected it in concentrated beams. When these beams struck Cathari armor, they did not just penetrate it, they vaporized it. The first wave ceased to exist in 17 seconds. The Queen felt something cold spreading through her neural network. Her warriors were dying faster than she could process the information. This was impossible. Humans were prey animals. They did not fight back like this. She ordered her hive ships forward, bringing their heavy weapons to bear. The human fleet would be crushed by superior firepower. Admiral Lane had been waiting for exactly this response. All ships execute jump pattern alpha. The human fleet vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were simply gone, leaving the Cathari weapons firing in empty space. 3 seconds later, the humans reappeared behind the hive ships, their weapons already targeting engine sections and command centers. The Queen tried to turn her fleet around, but human ships kept jumping, appearing and disappearing in patterns that no Cathari tactician could predict. Each time they materialized, they fired, and each time they fired, something important died. Captain Henry Walsh guided the Defiant through the chaos with cold precision. His weapons officer, a young woman named Sandra Kim, had never fired at a living target before today. Now she was destroying ships that carried thousands of enemy warriors, and she did not hesitate. "Main hive ship targeted," she reported, firing. The plasma beam struck the Queen's vessel directly in its central mass. The ship did not explode immediately. Instead, it seemed to fold in on itself as internal explosions ripped through deck after deck. The Queen had just enough time to transmit a final message to the collective before her. Consciousness ended. The message was simple: run. The surviving Cathari ships tried to flee. Human vessels pursued them, picking them off one by one as they attempted to reach the hyperspace jump point. Not a single enemy ship escaped. Admiral Lane surveyed the wreckage floating in Haven's Rest orbit. 30 hive ships destroyed. Over 1 million enemy warriors killed. Human casualties, 47 dead, 2 ships damaged. "Send a message to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them we won." News of the battle spread through galactic communication networks within days. The assembly tried to suppress it, but information had a way of escaping even the most controlled channels. A primitive species had annihilated a Cathari invasion force. It was the first time any species had accomplished such a feat. The Cathari hive mind, collective consciousness that had dominated a quarter of the galaxy for millennia, convened an emergency council. They decided to send a larger force. Humanity would be taught the price of resistance. The second invasion came 6 months later with 3 times as many ships. It lasted for hours. The third invasion lasted 2 hours. After each defeat, Human forces recovered Cathari technology and studied it. Looking for weaknesses to exploit, General Patricia Dunn proposed what no one else dared suggest. We should stop waiting for them to come to us. We should go to them. The offensive began on a morning that the Cathari would remember as the Day of Fire. Human fleets appeared in orbit around Keth Prime, the swarm's homeworld, without warning. They had bypassed every defense, every patrol, every warning system. They were simply there. Their weapons pointed at a planet that had never known fear. General Dunn led the ground assault personally. Her Marines, equipped with powered armor and plasma rifles, cleared hive tunnels that had stood for 10,000 years. The fighting was brutal and close, exactly the kind of warfare that humans excelled at. Patricia found the last surviving queen in a chamber deep beneath the planet's surface. The creature was ancient, larger than any Cathari she had encountered, and completely helpless. Her guards were dead. Her warriors were dead. Her civilization was at humanity's mercy. "You are prey," the queen whispered through a translator device. "You are supposed to be prey." Patricia removed her helmet so the queen could see her face. "We were never prey. You just hadn't figured that out yet." The surrender was unconditional. Humanity did not occupy Cathari worlds or demand tribute. They simply left, taking their fleet and their soldiers with them. "If you attack us again," Patricia told the new leadership council, "we will return. And we will not leave anything alive. Understand?" They understood. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The balance of power that had existed for millennia was shifting. And it was shifting toward a species that had been dismissed as primitives just 30 years before. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Verton requested a private meeting with human leadership. For the first time in his long life, he was not laughing. The Halixian Dominion had ruled the Galactic Assembly for 8,000 years. Their technology was the most advanced in known space. Their military had never lost a war. Their culture viewed other species as varying degrees of inferior, with humans occupying the very bottom of that scale. When High Chancellor Verton's request for a meeting was declined by President Elena Santos, the insult echoed through Halixian society like a physical blow. No species had ever refused an audience with the Dominion's leader. The fact that primitives had done so was beyond comprehension. Verton summoned his military council and demanded action. They must be reminded of their place, a demonstration of power, something to break their delusions of significance. The demonstration took the form of a battle group intercepting the civilian freighter Morning Light in neutral space. The ship was carrying agricultural equipment and had no weapons, no military value, and no strategic importance. It did have 43 crew members, including Captain Gregory Dunn, younger brother of General Patricia Dunn. The Halixian commander did not attempt communication. He simply gave the order to fire. Gregory had time to send a single distress call before his ship was torn apart by weapons designed to destroy battleships. The transmission was brief, just his name and coordinates, and the words "Halixians attacking." Then static. Patricia was reviewing troop deployments on Mars when the message reached her. She listened to it 3 times, her face completely still. Then she stood up, walked to her office window, and stared out at the red landscape for nearly an hour without speaking. When she finally turned around, her aide was waiting nervously. "General, what are your orders?" "None yet," Patricia said quietly. "This goes above me." President Elena Santos convened the full Security Council within 2 hours. The room was tense, filled with military leaders and cabinet members who understood what this attack meant. The Halixians had murdered human citizens without provocation or warning. Under any reasonable interpretation, it was an act of war. Admiral Lane was the first to speak. "We have the capacity to strike back immediately. The First Fleet is ready. We could be in Halixian space within hours. And then what?" asked Defense Minister Lucas Grant, son of the former president. "We destroy one of their battle groups. They send 10 more. We win those fights, and they send 50. The Dominion has thousands of ships. Even with our technology, we can't match those numbers." Patricia spoke for the first time. "Then we don't fight their numbers. We fight their minds." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about Gregory. Everyone understood that Patricia had more reason than anyone to want immediate, violent revenge. But that was not what she was proposing. The Halixians believe they are untouchable, she continued. Their home world has never been attacked. Their people have never known fear. They think their power is absolute because no one has ever challenged it. She looked at President Santos. We don't need to destroy their fleet. We need to show them that we can touch them whenever we want. That no place is safe. That all their power means nothing if we decide to take it away. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. It required assets that no one knew existed, capabilities that had been developed in absolute secrecy, and a level of precision that bordered on impossible. It was approved unanimously. For 3 weeks after the Morning Light attack, humanity did nothing. No statements, no threats, no visible military movements. The Halixians waited for a response that never came. Verton gave speeches mocking human cowardice, describing how the primitives had learned their lesson at last. Then the lights went out. The operative known only as Sullivan had spent those 3 weeks, positioning teams throughout the Helix Prime system. They were the best infiltrators humanity had ever produced, trained in techniques that other species did not know existed. They moved through Halixian society like ghosts, placing devices in locations no one thought to guard. At exactly midnight, standard galactic time, everything connected to the Halixian power grid ceased functioning. The capital city, home to 20 billion inhabitants, went dark. Communication satellites fell silent. Orbital defense platforms drifted without power, their weapons cold and useless. The panic that followed was immediate and total. The Halixians had not experienced darkness in 8,000 years. Their ancestors had conquered it so long ago that they had forgotten what it felt like. Now it surrounded them completely, and in that darkness, fear took hold. Admiral Lane's first fleet emerged from fold space directly above the capital. 100 human warships, weapons charged, and targeting systems active, arranged in a formation that spelled out a simple message in the patterns of their running lights. Remember Lane opened a channel to the planet below? This is Admiral Christopher Lane of the Human Defense Force. Your government ordered the murder of 43 civilians aboard the freighter Morning Light. We require the individuals responsible to surrender themselves for trial within 1 hour. Failure to comply will result in consequences. He did not specify what those consequences would be. He did not need to. The Halixian fleet was scattered across the galaxy, maintaining the Dominion's vast holdings. Even at maximum speed, the nearest battle group was days away. The orbital platforms that should have protected the homeworld were floating uselessly. Their crews unable to even move in the zero gravity without power. Verton attempted to contact the assembly for assistance. His transmission went nowhere. Human ships were jamming every frequency. The hour passed slowly. In the final minutes, shuttles began launching from the capital, carrying the individuals humanity had demanded. Military officers, government officials, and High Chancellor Verton himself. Patricia Dunn met them personally in the hangar bay of the Defiant. Verton's face was no longer capable of the amused expression she remembered from assembly recordings. Now it showed only the pale terror of a creature who had discovered that power was not as permanent as he had believed. You will stand trial for the murder of 43 human citizens, Patricia told him. You will be judged by human law and sentenced by human judges. You will spend the rest of your life in a human prison. Verton made a sound that the translator rendered as a whisper. You could kill us. Any other species would kill us. Why imprisonment? Patricia leaned close enough that he could see every line of grief and anger in her face. Because my brother would not have wanted me to become a murderer for his sake. Because we are not you. And because living with the knowledge of what you lost will be far worse than a quick death. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. The evidence was presented methodically, without emotion or rhetoric. The verdicts were guilty on all counts. The sentences were life imprisonment, without possibility of release. The message was received on every inhabited world. Humanity could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. And they would. On Nexus Prime, the assembly was in chaos. Species that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant now proposed alliance treaties, trade agreements, anything to establish friendly relations. Others demanded immediate military action before humans became too powerful to stop. President Santos watched the debates through intercepted communications and smiled. "They still don't understand," she said to her advisors. "They think this is about power. What is it about then?" asked Minister Grant. "It's about a simple truth that we've always known and they've never learned. You don't have to be the biggest or the strongest to be dangerous. You just have to be willing to do whatever it takes to survive." She turned away from the screen. "Prepare for the next phase. I suspect they're going to make things very interesting very soon." The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly was the first of its kind in 2,000 years. Every species sent their highest representatives, their most powerful leaders, their most brilliant strategists. The topic was singular and urgent: what to do about humanity. The great hall that had witnessed 12 millennia of civilized debate now echoed with something that had not been heard there before. "Fear. They must be destroyed," argued the Vorn ambassador, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. "Before they grow stronger, before they become unstoppable, we have the numbers. We have the resources. We must act now." "Destroyed how?" demanded the Solari representative, a being of flowing liquid metal. "Did you watch what they did to the Cathari? Did you see what happened on Helix Prime? They appear and disappear at will. They strike without warning. Our ships cannot even target them." "Then we find their worlds and burn them," the Vorn replied. "They cannot hide 40 billion of their kind. We reduce their colonies to ash, one by one, until nothing remains." A new voice entered the debate. The Mindery speaker, representing a species of telepathic entities, projected calm into the chamber. "And how many of us will they take with them? How many worlds will burn before theirs do? You speak of acceptable losses, but you have no idea what the cost will be." The debate continued for days. Alliances formed and dissolved. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common ground in their terror of humanity. Gradually, a consensus emerged. The Containment Compact was announced on the 10th day of deliberations. 31 species had agreed to combine their military forces into a single fleet, the largest ever assembled in galactic history. The fleet would surround human space, cut off all access to resources and territory, and slowly strangle the upstart civilization until it surrendered or starved. No direct assault would be attempted. They had learned that much at least. But humanity needed trade to survive, needed room to expand, needed the freedom of movement that made their strange jump technology effective. Take those things away, and they would wither. It was a plan born of desperation, disguised as strategy. On Earth, Intelligence Director Laura Bennett presented the findings to President Santos and the Security Council. The news was grim. Over 10,000 warships from dozens of species were assembling at staging points throughout the region. Supply lines were being established. Command structures were being finalized. "They're serious about this," Laura concluded. "They genuinely believe they can contain us." Admiral Lane studied the tactical projections with a veteran's eye. "They have the numbers. Even with our technology, we cannot fight all of them simultaneously." "No," President Santos agreed. "We cannot." The room waited for her to continue. Alina Santos was 64 years old, the daughter of immigrants from Central America, who had risen through politics by being smarter and tougher than everyone around her. She had been president for 12 years, and in that time she had guided humanity through its most dramatic transformation in history. "Request a summit," she said finally. "One representative from each compact species. We will meet at the neutral station in the Andros system. Neutral ground, no weapons." Minister Grant leaned forward. "You want to negotiate?" "I want to give them a choice." Santos stood and walked to the window overlooking the lights of Washington. "For 60 years, we asked politely to be treated as equals. They laughed at us. We left, and they assumed we would die. When we survived, they assumed we would beg to return. When we proved we could fight, they assumed we would eventually be overwhelmed. She turned back to face her advisors. Every assumption they have made about us has been wrong. Now they are making another one. They assume we have only two options: surrender or fight a war we cannot win. Is there a third option? Asked General Dunn. Santos smiled, and there was something ancient in that expression. Something that went back to the first humans who had faced predators with nothing but sharpened sticks and refused to be prey. There is always a third option. They just cannot see it because they have never needed to look for it. That is the difference between us and them. They became powerful so long ago that they forgot what it means to struggle. We never had that luxury. Summit convened 3 weeks later. 31 delegations filled the conference hall of the Andra station, representing species that had dominated the galaxy since before humans discovered fire. They looked at the single human representative with a mixture of fear and contempt. President Santos walked to the podium at the center of the room. She carried no notes, no data tablets, no prepared speeches. She simply looked at the assembled powers of the galaxy and spoke. You came here expecting to deliver terms for our containment? Instead, I am going to offer you a choice. Murmurs rippled through the delegations. This was not how negotiations worked. The weaker party did not set the agenda. Option 1, Santos continued. You proceed with your containment compact. You surround our space. You cut off our trade. You try to strangle us into submission. She paused. If you choose this option, we will fight. Not the way you expect. Not in battles you can predict or prepare for. We will come for your home worlds. We will come for your leaders. We will come for everything you hold dear, and we will not stop until one of us no longer exists. The hall was absolutely silent. Some of you will survive, Santos acknowledged. Perhaps most of you, but you will never sleep peacefully again. You will spend the rest of your existences wondering when a human fleet will appear in your sky. That is the future you are choosing. She let the words sink in before continuing. Option 2. You accept us as equals, not servants, not observers. Full partners in galactic civilization. You open your technology archives. You include us in your treaties. You treat us as you treat each other. The Vorn ambassador's crystal form flickered. And if we do this, you will peacefully coexist with us. We will do better than that, Santos replied. We will share our technology, our fold space drives, our weapons, our medical advances. We have spent 30 years innovating while you spent 30 years standing still. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Why should we trust you? Demanded another delegate. After everything that has happened, Santos nodded slowly. Because we are here. Because I am standing in this room, offering peace, when we could have continued striking from the shadows indefinitely. Because despite everything you have done to us, we would rather build than destroy. She spread her hands. Choose destruction, and you will find us the most terrible enemies the galaxy has ever known. Choose cooperation, and you will find us the most loyal allies you could imagine. Those are your options. There are no others. The delegations requested time to deliberate. Santos returned to her ship and waited. The response came 48 hours later. 23 species had chosen option 2. 8 had chosen to proceed with containment within a year. Those 8 had reconsidered their position. It was not threats that changed their minds. It was watching humanity share jump drive technology with former enemies. It was seeing human doctors develop cures for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. It was the gradual realization that cooperation with humans brought benefits that isolation could never match. The galaxy entered a new era. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as servants or subjects, but as partners. The old powers learned to respect the young species that had refused to accept its assigned role. And in quiet moments, when the ancient minds of the galaxy contemplated the future, they felt something they had not experienced in thousands of years. Not fear exactly, something deeper. Dread of what would have happened if they had chosen differently. dread of the enemy that humanity could have become, dread of the fate they had so narrowly avoided. President Santos retired a decade later, her work complete. On her last day in office, she gave a brief address to the people of Earth and its colonies. "They called us primitives," she said. "They said we had nothing to offer. They laughed when we asked for respect and ignored us when we left their table." She smiled, the same smile she had worn in the summit hall, ancient and knowing. "We showed them something they had forgotten. Power is not given, it is earned. Respect is not asked for, it is demanded. And the species that determines the future is not the one with the oldest history or the largest fleet. It is the one that refuses to give up, no matter the odds." She nodded once to the cameras. "We are humanity. Remember that. The galaxy would never forget."